Paullus (PL) is a common masculine given name in countries and ethnicities with a Christian heritage and beyond Europe, in Christian religious communities throughout the world. The name has existed since Roman times and derives from the Roman family name Paulus or Paulus, in particular in the Roman patrician family of the Gens Aemilia, including prominent persons such as Lucius Aemilius Paullus, Lucius Aemilius Paullus Macedonicus, Lucius Aemilius Lepidus Paullus, Tertia Aemilia Paulla, as well as Sergius Paulus. Origin and diffusion. The Roman family name Paulus derives from the Latin adjective meaning small or humble and is cognate to the modern English word few. During the Classical Age it was used to distinguish the minor of two people of the same family bearing the same name. Its prevalence in nations with a Christian heritage is primarily due to its attachment to St. Paul the Apostle, whose Greek name was Pi Alpha Lambda Omicron Sigma, Paulos, a transliteration from the Latin, also carrying the modest meaning of this name. In Arabic, Paul is phonetically translated to or. It is occasionally used as a slang term, used to indicate the equivalent of the English slang term boss. The name Paul is common in all European languages. The feminine versions are Paula, Pauline, Paulina, and Paulette. The following list of people named Paul are widely recognized as notable as a given name: Pope Paul, several popes; St. Paul, several saints; Paul I, several rulers. All pages beginning with Paul for people known as Paul, Paul, Latin Patriarch of Constantinople. Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft. Paul Thomas Anderson, American film director and screenwriter. Paul Anka, Canadian singer and songwriter. Paul Bernardo, Canadian rapist and serial killer. Paul Betancourt, American politician. Paul D. Boyer, American biochemist, Nobel Prize winner. Paul Breitner, German international footballer. Paul Briggs, American football player. Paul Brown, American football coach and team owner. Paul Brothers, Canadian television personality. Paul Brothers, American football player. Paul Bullman, Swiss actor. Paul Caraway, American general. Paul Cézanne, French artist. Paul Clatney, Canadian football player. Paul Cornell, British writer. Paul Cornick, American football player. Paul Cranmer, Canadian football player. Paul Cuba, American football player. Paul Daniels, British magician. Paul Dirac, English physicist. Paul Fenton van Vlissingen, Dutch entrepreneur. Paul Galvin, founder of Motorola. Paul Gascoigne, English international footballer. Paul Gauguin, French artist. Paul Georges, American painter. Paul Getty, British philanthropist. Paul Hewson, the birth name of Irish singer Bono of U2 fame. Paul Jappi, American football player. Paul Halleck, American football player. Paul Jennings Hill, American anti-abortion activist and murderer. Paul Hill, NASA flight director. Paul Hill, American music director. Paul von Hindenburg, German field marshal and statesman. Paul Hogan, Australian actor and comedian. Paul Ince, English international footballer. Paul Keating, a former Australian Prime Minister. Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize-winning American economist and writer. Paul Levesque, American professional wrestler better known as Triple H. Paul Matisse, American artist and inventor. Sir Paul McCartney, English singer and musician, formerly a member of the Beatles. Paul Merton, English comedian. Paul Newman, American actor, philanthropist, and motorsport team owner and driver. Paul Oakenfold, English electronic musician. Paul Oglesby, American football player. Paul Patterson, American author and storyteller. Paul Pierce, American basketball player. Paul Radu, Romanian investigative journalist. Paul Revere, patriot of the American Revolution and silversmith. Paul Robeson, American actor, singer and activist. Paul Rodgers, English musician, songwriter, singer in Free and Bad Company. Paul Ryan, American politician and current House Speaker. Paul Samuelson, Nobel Prize-winning American economist. Paul Sauringhouse, American football player. Paul Scholes, England international footballer. Paul Schofield, English actor. Paul Serrano, paleontologist. Paul Shorten, Canadian football player. Paul Simon, American musician. Sir Paul Smith. Paul Stastny, Canadian-American ice hockey player. Paul Tang, Dutch politician. Paul F. Tompkins, American comedian, podcaster, actor and writer. Paul van Himst, Belgian international footballer. Paul Verhoeven, Dutch film director. Paul Walker, American actor. Paul Weller, English musician formerly of the Jam. Paul Wesley, American actor. Paul Whitehouse, Welsh comedian. Paul Young, English singer most famous as a solo act in the 1980s. Paul Young, English singer most famous for work with Sad Cafe and Mike Plus the Mechanics. Paul Zieski, American football player. Peter Paul Rubens, Flemish Baroque painter. RuPaul, prominent American drag queen. Has a surname Aaron Paul, American actor. Adrian Paul, English actor. Alexander Paul, American politician. Alexandra Paul, American actress. Alice Stokes Paul, American suffragist leader. Art Paul, American graphic designer. Bernard Paul, French film director and screenwriter. Bernard Paul, Mauritian, British boxer of the 1990s and 2000s. Billy Paul, American soul singer. Bruno Paul, German architect, interior designer, and furniture designer. Caroline Paul, American writer. Chris Paul, American basketball player. Christy Paul, news anchor for CNN Headline News. Ellis Paul, American singer, songwriter and folk musician. Harry Paul, Scottish footballer. Henry Paul, driver of the car in which Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed were killed. Hierith Paul, Tanzanian-Canadian fashion model. Henry Paul, rugby league footballer from New Zealand. Jason Paul, American professional wrestler better known as JTG. Les Paul, American guitarist. Rand Paul, American ophthalmologist and politician. Robbie Paul, rugby league footballer from New Zealand. Ron Paul, American obstetrician and politician, and presidential candidate in 1988, 2008, and 2012, father of Rand. Roy Paul, Welsh international footballer. Vinnie Paul, drummer for American metal band Pantera. Wolfgang Paul, German physicist who co-developed the ion trap, Nobel Prize winner. De Paul, Lindsay De Paul, English singer-songwriter. Vincent De Paul, Catholic saint. Translations: Albanian, Pali, Pavli, Pal, Amharic, Ancient Roman, Paulus, Paulinus, Arabic Boulos, Aragonese, Pavlo, Armenian Western, Armenian Eastern, Asturian, Pablu, Basque, Paulo, Belarusian, Bengali, Biblical Greek, Paulos. Biblical Latin, Paulus. Bosnian, Pavo, Pavla. Breton, Paol. Bulgarian, Catalan, Paul. Chinese, Cornish, Paul. Corsican, Paulu. Croatian, Pavo, Pavla, Pavo. Czech, Pavel. Danish, Pol, Povl, Pal. Dutch, Paul, Paulus, Porao. Esperanto, Paulo, Paco. Estonian, Paul, Pavel, Pavo. Faroese, Paul, Pal, Pali, Pol, Pauli. Finnish, Pavali, Pavo, Pauli. French, Paul, Paul. Frisian, Pouw, Pauls, Paulus. Galician, Paulo. Georgian, German, Paul. Greek, Pi Alpha Upsilon Lambda Omicron Sigma. Gujarati, Haitian Creole, Pol, Aga, Polo, Hausa, Bulus, Hawaiian, Paulo, Hebrew, Hindi, Hungarian, Pal, Icelandic, Paul, Indonesian, Paulus, Irish, Podel, Italian, Paolo, Paolino, Japanese, and in biblical context, P. Canada, Korean, Latin, Paulus, Latvian, Pauls, Pavils, Lithuanian, Paulus, Paulius Povilis, Luganda, Paulo, Malayalam, Macedonian, Maltese, Paul, Paulu, Manx, Pale, Maori, Paera, Marathi, Mongolian, Navi, Paul, Nepali, Norwegian, Paul, Pal, Occitan, Pau, Old English, Paulus, Philippine languages, Pablo, Paulo, Polish, Parel, Portuguese, Paulo, Paulino, Paulinho, Punjabi, Romanian, Paul, Pavel, Russian, Sardinian, Paulu, Scottish Gaelic, Paul, Pal, Serbian, Sicilian, Paulu, Paulu, Sinhala, Pavulu, Slovak, Pavol, Slovene, Pavel, Spanish, Pablo, Paulino, Swedish, Paul, Pal, Tamil, Telugu, Thai, Ukrainian, Urdu, the Venetian, Paglo, Polo, Vietnamese, Paulo, Welsh, Paul,